You know, something always struck me as a kid. Why do they have such big walls around cemeteries and graveyards? I mean, it's not like people outside really want to get in, and you'd certainly hope that the people inside are not trying to get out. Yes, today on Dragon's Teeth, we're continuing our haunted graveyard build. Hi folks, thanks for joining me for our continued graveyard build. This is of course going to be one of the boards for the upcoming Fantasy Skirmish game, We Want the Gold. The rules are pretty much done now. I've still got a few bits and pieces to tweak. I'm going to do a run through the rules before I take it down the club to play test, and hopefully that's going to be in February. So I've got a few more weeks to get all the boards and other bits and pieces done. Now, if you remember, last time I finished the mausoleums, bar a quick wash, and I'm getting on now to actually painting the terrain, painting the bases. One issue I did have is when I came to start painting and moving the boards around, a couple of the tombstones were very brittle. They're really just a thin sliver of plastic, so they weren't stuck in place very well. And I thought, well, should I get the polyfiller back out and maybe build up the terrain around these a bit? Problem with the polyfiller is it's very liquidy, I guess. You've almost got to hold it in place if you're building it up, or you've got to put so much in that we're not going to have any place for figures to stand. So what I then remembered is I had some kids' clay pots. I used these a while ago to base some 10mm trees and for some other bits and pieces of 10mm terrain. These are basically small clay pots and they air dry. So you take the clay out of the pot, you mould it into whatever shape you want, and it dries overnight. So that's what I did. I've used that clay just to build a little bit of base for support around some of those tombstones. That will hopefully hold them firmly in position. The next thing is that this time I did want to get all my walls finished and built. I have the front and back gates and I have some of those columns with the railing sections. I realised I didn't really have enough, so I sent off for some more to the same manufacturer. It's a person on eBay. Of course, I'll be including all the links in the notes below. However, of course, it is Christmas, so the post is delayed, which is one thing. But then also I got a note through from Royal Mail saying there's not enough postage has been paid on this package. You need to pay £7 and then we can deliver your parcel. So that's been another delay as well as a bit of extra expense. So I'm not going to be able to finish that perimeter off and build my sections of ruined wall until all those pieces arrive, which should hopefully be in the next couple of days. But what I'm going to do today is get all my gravestones and tombs painted, plus the cobbles, and I'm going to make a start on the actual scatter, whether for those little paths within the cemetery or the sort of ground itself. So let's make a start. I'm using my usual sort of cheap acrylic paint for the ground cover. Adding in a little bit of water just to thin it down a touch. And that will give us a nice coverage over the bases. This is very quick, it doesn't take long at all. Even I've got 9 of these to do, but using this paint it really doesn't take long. I'm just using a smaller brush just to go around some of the tombstones there. Then for the cobbles, again, just cheap acrylic craft paint. I'm painting those black. Now my tombstones and my monuments, they've already been sprayed black as an undercoat. Over that I'm putting on a fairly light coat of dark grey. Again, I don't want complete coverage with this because I want those black shadow lines to show through. And then I'm going to dry brush over that with a much lighter grey. One thing I noticed with some of these 3D prints, they have like lines on them. I guess that's part of the process. It's not really a major issue, but they do show up a little bit when you dry brush. The cobbles also get a coat of dark grey. Now for my scatter, I found this. I was thinking of a way of getting the scatter across the board, and this is a makeup, I think it's like foundation or something, from my wife, and it has a perforated top, as you can see there. I thought this would be great for applying my scatter. I've got a few different shades here. I don't want to keep the scatter all the same colour, so I'm mixing a few different types in together, more of a sort of gravelly one there. So this is a bit like a cooking show now. I'm adding a few spoonfuls of each into a plastic tray, and then I'm going to mix those up just to get them all nicely mixed together. Now I do highly recommend, if you're ever pouring scatter, get yourself a funnel, because you know how this stuff works, it will go all over the place otherwise. So that then goes into my little makeup container, or whatever it's called. Make sure you put both lids on securely and give that a good shake. So that really mixes all those three types of scatter in together. And I had no clue how this was going to work out. I've never tried using this before. Normally I'll sprinkle or use a spoon. Standard PVA craft glue. Add a little bit of water to that just to thin it down a touch. And then I'll start spreading that across the base. So what I'm doing first are the sort of path and similar areas, the areas that the buildings are going to sit on. So these are going to be that sort of brown with a touch of gravel in. That's going to be the first lot of scatter to go down. Then it's just a case of shaking. And I found this worked really well. The holes are just the right size to get the scatter out, but not too much of it. And because it's quite small, I can be fairly specific about where the scatter goes. So that works so well, I thought I'd do the same thing for the rest of the base. Now this is static grass mixed in with some of that brown scatter from before. I didn't want the grass to be too green. This is a haunted graveyard after all. Apply the PVA glue again. And a bit more shaking. And similar thing. If any went onto the tombstones, I just took that off with a soft brush. Though some little bits I left in place because it looked like moss. So that worked quite well as well. In the time it took to do that, the cobbles are dried, so they now got a dry brushing. I'll probably put a wash over these just to finish them off as well. And there we are. That's how the central two boards look with the scatter on and the paths and cobbles done. The tombstones are all painted up. I'm probably going to, as I say, add a wash, maybe to the ground, certainly to the church, just to tone that down a bit. But I'm pleased with how those have come out. They're ready now to have the finishing touches added on. There we are then, things are really beginning to take shape. I'm pleased with the way the scatter came out. As I say, I didn't want the cemetery looking too green, too verdant. It's not really a springtime setting, it's more a Halloween one really. So I may even dull that down a little bit more with a wash. I'm looking at making my own washes, which is something I'll go through next time, or perhaps the time after. And of course, hopefully those walls and railings will have turned up, so I can get those in place, and where I've got gaps, make the ruined walls. So that's what we'll be doing next time. Hope you've enjoyed today. Thanks for watching. As always, please do send in any tips or suggestions, all gratefully received. If you haven't already, please do like, share and subscribe, and I'll see you soon.